Hello. Yeah, welcome to our transformation. This is going to be great. You know what? I just realized that I really like this new ceiling because I feel so tall. I know the other short guys they get me. They understand. It's a very special night, right? So I thought, what would be an interesting way to start off the evening talking? What should we engage first off? And I thought we would talk about, hey, this is not going forward. I thought we would talk about what makes us uncomfortable. I just said we had a new system. What makes you uncomfortable? Anybody want to raise a hand? How about polyester? How about when you're on a plane and your pilot says you got to make an emergency landing? No. That usually shakes me up. Is nothing here? No ideas? Everybody's just cool with everything? Okay, I'm hearing it. Change. Negative people. I like that. It's kind of a 12-step-y thing. Yeah, back there. Last minute unexpected. Well, you have been here for the renovation. I didn't notice you, but you were around. Change freaks people out. Now, this is a place that I've been to many times, and I bet a lot of you people have been here as well. Name this place. It is San Francisco. And this is that same spot today. Now, so when you go, if you grew up there, for example, and I grew up not that far from San Francisco, not the same place. Here's a question. Is it better? That I can't answer. I can tell you this, it is different. It is totally different. It's what? It's more crowded. It's more what? It's expensive. All right? Nobody, well, some of you here, you know who you are, could live there, but the rest of us, the rest of us can't even live there, right? Very different, and it's a very different experience being there now from when I was growing up in California. But change is inevitable. One of them is us. We change, right? Do we not? So everybody recognizes this man. He needs no introduction. And he came up with the theory of relativity. And you look at it and you think, okay, it had to be the man on the right who came up with relativity. Because the guy on the left looks like the vice principal at a Bavarian boys' school. He's a little... Why is that funny? It just is. I don't know. But we change. Hopefully we get more wise, we get more mature, but, sometimes not. It was the younger guy who actually did relativity. He looked like that when it happened. Even imaginary things change. They do. Okay? Superman used to look like your dad. And he just did. And I thought that was my dad. And it's very cool. Now, if this looks like your dad, send him down. We've got some work for him to do on the building. Tell him it'll take all his superpower. All right, our little gadgets change. All right, we used to have these big clunky computers, and we thought they were fabulous, right? Remember the very first computer you got in the early 80s? And how is this even possible to move a word around? Amazing. Now you can, take out a second mortgage on your phone. It's easy to do. Now, the way we live has changed. We don't interact the same way anymore, do we? I mean, you all go to dinner and you whip out your phones and everybody's on the phone. And it used to be that you sort of, had uncomfortable or awkward silences, but at least you had to figure out what you were going to say. Now you don't have to do that. You can just look at your phone. And this is a very typical scene. We all know it. I am told that people still read. I need some evidence. I mean, I know they read what's on their phone, but I think they're reading emojis. Really? Okay. Della's wondering, when is he going to get to the art? It's going to be long. Okay, so we all know this picture. Now, it's about 500 years old. How do you think she looks today? Pretty much the same. All right? I mean, no significant changes. As long as you take good care of art, you keep it safe, you keep a constant temperature, you keep your grimy little fingers off of it, it'll be fine. And it will just persist among all the other changes. But what does change with art? Because there's a big, big change that does occur with art. It's how we think about it. 500 years ago, people saw Mona Lisa through the eyes of the Renaissance era, right? And now we often will look at Mona Lisa with 21st century eyes, and you can think very different things. I've heard people say, Mona Lisa, she was the first feminist. Some people say she was not the first feminist, she wasn't even a woman. That's Leonardo. It's really a self-portrait in drag. Have you heard that theory? And it's got front row says could be. You're representing your row, remember. Or we tend to project things, onto works of art that are really 21st century. It's a very dangerous way to look at the past. There's a word for it. We call it presentism, which is kind of a fancy way of saying looking at the past through the eyes of the present. So we have to talk about art to get back to original meanings. It's not always easy, but when you want to talk about art either from the vantage point of the past or the present or places in between, where do you talk about that? Where's the best place in the world to talk about that? Here at the museum, where we talk about art and we let people experience art on their own terms. We do both. And it's a tough job. It's good work to get, if you can get it, to get people experience it on their own. What you need to have is a collection to talk about. And everybody here, I think virtually everybody here tonight, remembers our collection. And this is a shot of the big gallery that was right there in the front when you walked in, beautifully displayed. And all of you remember that we had our collection split into 4 basic areas. We had the antiquities in the front, which you will see. We had 7 galleries of Renaissance and Baroque art, 7, count them 7, 6,500 square feet of Renaissance and Baroque. We had a gallery of Asian, and then we had a few galleries of American, and then you were done. So it was roughly broken up into 4 big cultural areas. And when you walked in that first gallery, it's one of the smallest galleries. Just put on your thinking caps and remember walking into that gallery. There were how many works of art do you think in that small gallery? 20, 10? There were over 60. And I called it the Gallery of Rocks because you would walk in and you would be overwhelmed with how many carved heads there were, pieces of glass and ancient shards. And it was really tough to, your first experience of the collection was it was crowded and it was difficult, and people just tended to walk right through it. And they would walk instantly into the Renaissance and Baroque galleries, which began here. And we're very fortunate to have our wonderful Crest collection comprised of roughly 70 works of masterpieces by, again, Renaissance and Baroque masters. But as you went through the galleries, all beautifully displayed, most people not experts in Renaissance or Baroque, or the stories that go with these paintings, it could tend to look a little bit the same. I'm not saying it did, but it could feel that way to some people. And it's what I called saint fatigue. There was a lot of saints. And you would get like halfway through it. And by the time you got to your 15th Virgin Mary, it's like, I get it. She was important, but there were going to be like 12 more before you got out. It started, my first years here, I began to realize our collection is rich. There are probably other ways to be able to show it. And that was going to come, little did I know, down the road I was going to get my opportunity to do that. But one of the things that we feared, and we're going to look at these guys again, one of the things that we feared about future change as we were going through the capital campaign to renovate the museum is that a lot of people equate museums with tradition. and tradition equaling things that do not change, things you can always count on being there, always in the same place, always meaning the same thing. It's tough to accept the idea that nothing stays the same. Everything will eventually change. That's hard, because it means you will too. And it's a scary little thought. And so years ago, I'm talking 4 or 5, just a lot of years, for some of you, not for all of you. We were in a meeting of senior team level people at the museum, and I threw out this idea that, down the road, instead of this way that we have installed the collection, we could do it thematically. And everybody looked at me and said, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, one room could be like heads, and another room could be like maybe chairs. And everybody was rightfully stared at me. It would have been better if I'd had a PowerPoint or a point. And it just was confusing. And so the answer at that time was, no, we think we just want to keep everything the way it is. And because our patrons are going to want to see that. So for a long time, the idea was we were going to refresh the galleries. We were going to keep the same divisions, but we were going to refresh everything. And that was the big key word. So I made a map downstairs of every little piece that was going to go back up on the walls. And, that's a lot of stuff. And plus we're going to have these new galleries. And so originally we were looking for restored works of art that we could add, and new acquisitions that we could add, move things around a little bit. And the key thing was we've got to refresh this thing so it just looks different, shinier, better, basically the same, but new and improved. Now, question. It's all going to make you feel good because you're all going to know the answer. How many of you remember Karen Bercius? All of you should have raised your hands. So Karen comes to me one day and she says, okay, I'm ready to see the work that you've done, and on the gallery layout. So she came down and I showed it to her, and she had this way of just being so terribly diplomatic and good with her staff. But I could tell from 5 years at that point of being with her that what the look meant was, how could you be showing me this junk? She said to me, it looks the same. It looks exactly the same. And I said, Karen, it's refreshed. You can't tell from these little cutouts, but we cleaned them and we moved them around and all of that sort of thing. And she said, it's just not exciting. I thought it would be more exciting. And I said to her, well, look, do you remember this conversation we had about thematic? And I explained it again about putting the galleries together in a new and exciting way. And she said, okay, well, she said, I don't hate this, but I would like to see the other thing. I said, give me 24 hours, give me the weekend. It was like a TV movie, right? And of course we'd start Tom Cruise and Scarlett Johansson, okay? And then the clock starts ticking. I got 24 hours, make Karen happy, 24 hours. So she comes back Monday, and I had reinstalled this thing completely differently, and not at all like this anymore. This was going to go away. Instead, I said, in the very first gallery, we're going to go from 60 down to 2. We're going to have one piece from antiquity, a goddess, very early. All right, she's Roman. She's going back 2,000, 2,500 years, roughly. And it's an exquisite piece given to us by Dr. Turner. And next to it, we'll have a 20th century African-American artist, Elizabeth Catlett, with what? A goddess. All right? And those are going to be the only 2 pieces in that first gallery. And right through the doorway, you're going to see a goddess by Ribera from the Baroque era. So basically, when you come in, on my little map, just these 2 pieces, and then another goddess through the door. The idea was going to be that right at the beginning of your museum adventure, we would establish this basic idea that themes in art continue. Everybody who comes into the gallery is going to know what a goddess is generally. Even the people that, game have goddesses, and TV people, they know goddesses, they know what they are. They intervene for us, they listen to us, they help us, they're powerful figures in our lives. And that story could begin in the very first gallery, and we would say, every gallery is going to be like this. Every gallery is going to shift into a different theme. So it seems a little tricky at first. But in that first gallery, we defined what is a museum, what is an art museum. And we had never, ever done that before. We never just up front said, what is it, this space that you're in? And we have these words on the wall. What is an art museum? An art museum is a place to see, a place to think, and a place to feel. There are many ways of seeing. Everything in an art museum was made by a person. These things tell us stories about people, places, and ideas. Looking at art, we have the chance to experience something about the world we live in. An art museum is a place to ask questions. It is a place to wonder. An art museum is a place for you to be inspired to tell your stories and share your own ideas. Welcome to the Columbia Museum of Art. So rather than being the gallery of rocks that you just passed through, you're mesmerized by this initial comparison in a room that is very open, where you can actually get a tour group in. This is the Catlet. It's an extraordinary piece. So today, this is how, when you walk into the gallery tonight, in Gallery 1, this is what you see. You can, I know, somebody in front row just said, that's cool. You're well representing your row.
Except we need a picture of Bella, because she's our goddess.
There you go. I would repeat that, but I'm going to go forward. So you have Salas to the left, Elizabeth Catlett on the right, the Ribera through the middle. You can actually get a tour group in there and begin your tours in the gallery, because before you could never fit more than a couple of people in there at a time. So this was the mood we were establishing, that this is about your experience here, you being comfortable, you understanding, you recognizing the themes, and be able to talk about them right from the beginning. That was a crucial part of the thematic thinking. So again, another map. If you turn right from that first gallery, we think there's a right turn bias in the museum world based on absolutely no evidence whatsoever. But have you noticed a lot of the world is that way? It's just right, yeah, it exists, why not? So you turn right, and one of the things that art is about historically, traditionally, for thousands of years, art has identified for us who our gods are, who our heroes are, who the legends are. You know, think Mount Rushmore. Think, Kuan Yin figures, and think biblical figures, political figures, our leaders. Art always tells us that and shows that to us. So in that next gallery, we have gods, heroes, and legends occupying those three galleries. And this gave us a chance to mix up cultures, media, right? Subject matter of all kinds together in the same space. So it didn't matter when they were made or what they were made of. It's do they touch on this idea of a god or a hero or a legend? And this allowed us to bring out things we had not previously been able to bring out in any kind of context. A painting by Wanda Pareja that we have on view now. There are only 10 paintings in the world by Wanda Pareja. We have one. It's a bizarre story, but we do. And this is a painting of Philip IV, the King of Spain. To make this reinstallation even more exciting than merely thematic, we have restored and conserved a lot of paintings that you haven't seen. This painting hasn't been on the wall for 20 years, and now it's back up. When people enter this gallery, they all know what a god or a hero is. And in this gallery with Wanda Pareja is, Martin Luther King, is George Washington, there's Jupiter, they're people that you know, and you can look and see what they have in common or not. How does a god or a hero look? Well, they're calm, they're self-possessed, they look you straight in the eye. They're not falling apart. They're together, they're calm, they're central, they're centered. And from culture to culture, you see that. And what you see is that cultures have more in common than what separates them. That was a big idea with the thematic layout. We can see by looking at art this way, we see, wow, all around the world, we have more in common than things that separate us. It's fascinating to see it on the wall. Wanda Pareja, just quickly, he was a slave. He was a slave owned by the painter Velázquez, and he earned his freedom through his talent. So we're going to love to be able to tell that story and have that. There are going to be all kinds of new stories on the wall. We have the next gallery contains, actually is where the gods are. It's where our Botticelli is. every painting almost moved. But how many, you've all seen the Botticelli, right? Come on. We had to build around it. So we left the Botticelli where it was, and we added more spiritual beings to the Holy Family that is represented there. And what you have is the Botticelli still central, and Gabriel and the Virgin Mary still the medieval carvings to the right. But on the left, you have two Asian Lokapala figures that do exactly what angels do. They're guardian figures in the afterworld that look after things and take care of celestial business. Other cultures have this as well. And so you can talk about that in the same space, what they have in common, what makes them different. And I really wanted to put across from the Botticelli, I wanted to put this Guan Yin figure, because she was carved about the same time that Botticelli was painted. Mary is an intercessor figure, and so is the Guan Yin. They both will hear your suffering and intercede for you. Are they exactly the same? No, they're not. I mean, the Renaissance configuration is a painting, this is a carving, and obviously the Asian piece is much more voluptuous. In Chinese traditions, yin, the female principle, is the earth. You know, it's earthy, it's voluptuous, it's realistic. We take Renaissance, not that long, they would catch up in the Baroque era, but they have really more in common than not. But even citing and finding those differences is a fascinating journey all on its own. Okay, what about people who are not gods and heroes and legends? That's most of us, right? I mean, there are a few legends in here. You know who you are. But for everyday people, we wanted to take that on. We wanted to take on a gallery called Art and Identity, because we look at each other, and we still do this. It's hard not to. We make judgments based on how people appear. We do that very often. We make judgments based on things that, you know, and those judgments may be way, way off depending on the information we get, and we think we've correctly interpreted it. We could be very, very wrong. But it remains a problem. It remains a problem. And so we thought we would take it on. And so this gallery has a lot of different kinds of pieces dealing with difference and identity and how you identify people. And right in the middle of this gallery is this figure called Angel. So far, it has freaked out 100% of the people that have seen it. I'm keeping track. It is a ceramic work of art of a very young person of indeterminate gender who appears to us very fragile, very weak, very vulnerable. And yet there he is, or she, right in the middle of this gallery, looking kind of lost. Like, where am I? Who am I? And if you're disturbed, right, when you walk in this gallery, I was talking to an artist from Michigan, actually a week or so ago. He said, that's good. We try very hard to disturb our students in Michigan. And I said, you're doing a good job. So this gallery isn't necessarily, all the galleries are not necessarily about entertaining. They're also about challenging in a good way, in a positive way. And in this gallery, we have, for example, in one area of the gallery, we have a brand new work of art by Michaela Brown, a local artist, South Carolina woman artist, African-American artist, that we bought just a couple of years ago. Next to a George Tooker, a portrait of a person of, you know, is it a man or a woman? It's very hard to tell. Next to a portrait recently given to us by a donor who's here tonight. And when you look at the three of these together, you know, here on the far left, it appears that Michaela is trying to tell us her body is some kind of a battleground. Tooker seems to tell us that identity is shifting and lost. The 19th century French portrait is saying, look, beauty is a constant and a definite, and this is what it looks like, and anything that deviates from this is not beautiful. So that's a discussion to have right away with school children, college kids, members, everybody, and it's in this gallery. When I presented the thematic reinstallation to the docents, before we ever, you know, decided we were going to actually do it, because they're powerful people and you had to have their approval, that's true. Karen said, we can't get away with this without the docents, you know, because they'll come after us. And the docents told me this was their favorite gallery, the one they were looking forward to the most to be in and talking with kids, that this gave them a way to talk about things kids really wanted to talk about. In this gallery is a piece of furniture, a cabinet by Thomas Day. Why is it in an art and identity gallery? Well, because the maker who made it was an African-American furniture maker working before the Civil War with a successful furniture making business. Don't assume what artists can or can't do or where they can do it or how they manage to get it done. So assumptions work also the other direction. Sometimes they have happy endings, but you just can't tell always from knowing the surface. We have a brand new painting by Sig Abelies in there. It's the first major piece we have addressing Jewish traditions. We're very proud to have it. Sig is well known in South Carolina. We had no painting by Sig Abelies. We had about 24 works on paper. We needed a painting, so we just got one. Right beyond the Art and Identity Gallery is a small gallery that simply has fragile works on paper in there. And when you walk in, it's dark. But when you walk in, the light pops on. I mean, that was worth $6 million of the Capitol campaign right there. Because everybody goes, ooh, a light. Like, that's no wonder Disneyland makes so much money, right? So you walk in there, and it's a teachable moment. Why is light so destructive? Why is the environment so destructive to works of art that you need a room that is always dark unless you walk in there? We explain that because people really want to know why can't you have this stuff up all the time? Well, you can't. And this is yet another new acquisition, another new piece for us. This is by Henrietta Johnston. She worked in Charleston at the beginning of the 18th century. This is about from 1710. This is before George Washington was born. And she married a preacher who was kind of a deadbeat, couldn't pay the bills. And so, I mean, I'm not saying he didn't have faith, but, you need some cash. And he wasn't coming up with it. And so Henrietta sold her drawings. And he actually wrote a letter that survives, wrote a letter back to England that without Henrietta selling art, I don't know what we do. Well, I know what you do, you bum. But she sold her drawings, which I believe makes her the first professional artist in the colonies, and thus the first professional artist in the United States, what would later become the United States. So the first professional artist was not from New York or Boston, was from South Carolina, and wasn't a man, it was a woman. And didn't work in oils, she worked in pastels. That is a great story. It's a brand new piece for us with a great story to tell. And it was given to us by donors that I believe are here tonight. They want to remain anonymous. So here's what you do to find out who they are. All right? You take me and my wife to dinner. I'm giving you the key. You ply us with alcohol, and you see how that works out. That was the donor. Okay, one of the galleries, we're not going to do all the galleries, by the way. We're getting pretty close to the end, actually. One of the galleries is Virtue and Vice, and this was a gallery where one of the education employees came to me and said, I think Virtue and Vice is a great theme because, art often identifies things that are bad for us and things that are good for us. And I said to her, well, Glenna Barlow, who's here tonight, why don't make a list? And so she made a list, and we just did it. So it's important for you to know there are different voices in this reinstallation layout. Glenna's is one. My co-curator here at the museum, Catherine Walworth, another very important voice in deciding, coming up with ideas for these galleries. So she made a list, and if I'd have known she was going to steal some paintings out of my galleries, I might have said no. But here's one she took out of my Heroes gallery. It's our portrait of General Sumter, the original Gamecock. Many of you know that this was a painting that languished in the vault for decades, and Jenny Newell, who I believe is here tonight, restored it for us. We actually found out who did it, Johann Stolle, who had written on the back, I did this painting and I improved it, copy of a Raphael Peale. He made it better than the original. So again, lots of jewels back on the walls or on the walls for the very first time, and in a context that you can discuss immediately without knowing anything about art history per se. We have a design gallery. This is one that Catherine came up with. She kept loading galleries with decorative art objects and design objects. And I said to her, run with it, make a design gallery. And she did, and it's fabulous. It's one of the high points of your tour tonight, or if you're walking through the galleries tonight, is coming upon this gallery. So back to this. We have all of these works on the wall. There's more than this, actually. around 350 out of 7,000 works of art. That collection keeps on growing. It keeps on growing. One of the things, a big advantage with the thematic layout is if you ever get tired of a theme, or theme just seems like, you thought it was a great idea, it turns out everybody hates that idea, you can take down that entire gallery and replace it with another theme, and it doesn't disturb anything around it. You just pull it out like a kidney. You just take it out, all right, and put another one in, all right? So we can do that. In the past, we had no real way to increase the number of women artists on view, because if you weren't, one of the rock guys, one of the rock heads, or the Renaissance and Baroque, or the Asian gallery, or the American gallery, you really didn't fit in our old layout. There's no place for you. We only had a couple of women artists up in the old layout. Now, I believe it is 13 out of the 20 galleries have women artists represented. Artists of color, same story. It was very hard to fit you in the Baroque gallery. So now half the galleries are represented with African American artists. This is a big change. And those numbers aren't going to go down. They'll only go up. So we're more diverse. The demographics have shifted, and there are more stories from very different points of view. And there are these fabulously just beautiful moments. I don't want to forget this in this presentation tonight. Yes, we want to tell stories. Yes, we want to educate. Yes, we want you to experience things on your own terms, but we also want it to look really good everywhere. We changed all the paint colors, and we looked very closely at relationships that on occasion would just be stunning. And this is one where we have a Thomas Moran painting hanging over a Duncan Fife couch. It couldn't be more spectacular. You'll see it tonight. I am not suggesting that you buy art to go over a couch. That is not the message. It's just that it can be, on occasion, a very stunning experience. And Della touched on this in her introduction tonight. Who makes this possible? Not me. You. It's our patrons that have given us our collection. It's you that have given us this building. All of this that is here for Columbia and for South Carolina and for the Southeast and for tourists and even for football players, this, I know, even. You make this possible. And Della, again, said that. I'm seconding it because when you work with this material and you realize how fabulous and special it is, and you have the privilege of getting to put this up, you are more closely attuned to the fact that, wow, we would have nothing if we didn't have people who were generous and visionary and farsighted and who understand in the present that art can be civilizing. It can make us better than we are. It has that potential. And so this is the very end. We finally have contemporary galleries. You'll see that tonight. They're brand new. We have never had contemporary galleries before. And our collection really is growing in every single way. I want to just mention, again, Della touched on this earlier, the staff here that put this together, including my own staff and curatorial, Mike Dwyer doing the installation along with Daniel Richardson and Laura Garner and Amber Waterstrad and Noel Rice and Stephen Kramer and Alyssa Velasquez. All those people downstairs worked overtime and were stressed and were harried and were crazy, but we all believed, and I believe that you all believed in us. And so the last thing I want to say tonight is that we didn't totally renovate. There's a lot of the building that is still the way it is, but there's a lot that isn't. And I think there's been sufficient change that it's not quite like going into the phone booth and coming out with all those muscles and being Superman. But I think it's fair to say that we are a brand new museum and capable of a lot of brand new things. And I want to say that it's been a privilege to work on this project and to work with all of you, and I want to thank you for that personally. And I want you to go out tonight and enjoy the collection enormously. Thank you very much.